My earliest memories of childhood go back to my going to school, modern school, Barakhamba Road, and didn't like it one bit. And I used to cry when I went to school, come back and cry, and it was just awful. I mean, sometimes I get that same feeling, a sinking kind of a feeling. And therefore, my parents were sensitive enough. They removed me from that school. The only thing I liked in that school were the little ducks that used to go around. So anyway, I got out of that, went into the convent of Jesus and Mary, and that was a great thing because I studied there. I studied with girls who I liked very much. I liked and hated. It was kind of both the nuns and many of our teachers. But we did sports. It was a lovely school. And above all, it was a school which taught us sensitivity and also a lot of, discipline in the sense, in school, it was never a dirty school. Spick and shining floors and everything. But the friends were great, the teachers were great. Like most children, we hated many of them because they were far too strict. And I remember that we called the nuns all kinds of names and hated their coming there on the corridor, because the moment one saw them, you knew that you were going to be scolded for something. Either your shoelaces were not right or your dress was not properly ironed. And we loved eating everything. There were no canteens in school at that time. We loved eating everything from outside. The cycle wallas used to come with their dabbas and give us all kinds of rotten things, but we just loved them. And we used to sneak out and eat them. And there was this church, the cathedral, the Sacred Heart Cathedral. That's the only religious building I have been to religiously, for the simple reason, whether it was an exam or a scolding or something one was petrified of, one suddenly went into the church, crossed one's heart and said, "Oh God, please help me get out of this," or "Please see that that other person is not going to overtake us." Then we used to cycle to school. There were buses. There were the blue bus, the green bus, the red bus, and so on. I think in my very young years, I went to school in a bus. But as my sisters grew up, we all used to cycle to school. We used to live in what is today Kamraj Lane. So from there, we used to cycle to the convent. There was nothing, the Gurdwara was just a small Gurdwara, so you went through that. And we had friends, and we played pittu, and we played hopscotch, and I think we did simple things, climbing up trees, eating jamuns. There was an element of naughtiness, but that naughtiness came out of being a child, being young. And there was we used to listen to the radio, which was only certain hours in a day, and which was in our drawing room. We used to dance around, all the girls, to all kinds of funny things like Suraya style. So there it was. But one of the memories which I remember very, very clearly in my mind is the death of Mahatma Gandhi. The house was just a little away from where he was shot on 30 January Marg. We heard some shots. I remember outside in the kitchen playing with the domestic staff servants. We were all playing pittu or something. And suddenly we saw people running on the street behind our house saying, "Mahatma Gandhi ji ko maar diya, Mahatma Gandhi ji ko maar diya." Now, to us, even at that age, when I was just about 12 years old or 10 years old, the importance of Mahatma Gandhi was there. And in my family, he was considered like a godlike figure. We didn't have any idols in the family. We never had a Lakshmi or a Ganesh or the normal stuff that Ram or Krishna, anything like that. Nothing was there. Only one photograph of Mahatma Gandhi. And so I thought said, oh my God, he's died, so now the world is going to die. So I just waited, this was in the evening, that the birds will stop chirping and pralaya will descend upon us, doomsday has come. When it didn't happen, it was such a sigh of relief, and I ran to my mother and she said, don't be silly. He's a great man who's died. We're all very sad. But the world is not going to come to an end. So these kind of things, you know, emotions which were very happy and emotions which were shocking, and then realization. Then Delhi used to be very much smaller. Lutyens Delhi is where we lived, and it was all that. And there was no Pragati Maidan. So there was this Matka Peer, which used to have thousands of matkas on it. Doesn't have them anymore. But people used to go there, and that was the limit of Delhi on the site where now, of course, you have things going to Noida and all that. So Matka Peer was this end. There was no golf links. There was no this thing. So the end was Prithviraj Road. On this side, my school was the other end with a little market next to it. And we used to go out on treks in what is Chanakyapuri today. It was a total jungle with a huge nala which still remains there. And we used to do our girl guides over there. So we used to go for girl guiding there, for treks. And there was nothing at all except hyenas, jackals, which we felt petrified of and came home before it became too dark. I won't say I was a brilliant student. I was good, okay. Enjoyed my studies, but enjoyed reading storybooks much more. And it was a small family, my mother, my father, and my two other sisters. And I had a grandmother who died when I was there, and a great-grandmother who died, whose death I recall also. I must have been 6, 7 years old then. When she died, there was a lot of band that were played in the house. And that was, so I was a little, I told my mother, I said, I thought when somebody died, you cried. He said, no, but she's died at the grand old age of 100. So therefore, we celebrate death when it is at such a ripe age. I recall her doing her pujas. She used to take opium. I recall that also. And I recall also her being cantankerous, old, with a broken hip bone, crawling all over. But there she was. So we came in touch with a lot of realities of life, which my parents were good enough to shelter us from their impact by explaining that this was what life is about. So that's that.
What were your parents? I mean, what was your father? Was he?
My father was a civilian with a colonel's rank in the army. So he was a civil servant. My mother had been educated in Kannad College in Lahore, and then she came here, but she didn't quite finish her college. And I think when she went to college, my grandparents were so lonely without her that they brought her back, so that she didn't have much. But she was a gold medalist in English, which we were very proud of. And she could read and write English beautifully, but she couldn't speak it. She wouldn't want to speak it because there was a hesitation. There was all of us convent girls blabbering away in English. So she would not speak to us, but she understood everything. She wrote to us in English. My father, of course, was because he was more or less connected with the army, he was the typical old brown sahib, you know, who was very prim, very proper, and very correct, and we had to sit on the dining table properly, and so on and so forth. And whatever little mischief we wanted to have, if we wanted to have a sandwich at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we just had to somehow get into the kitchen, take hold of 2 pieces of bread, Very often the loki sabzi which was left behind, put that inside, take water, put lots of sugar and milk into it and drink it as a drink. But there were no Coca-Colas, there was nothing at all. And then there was this Gymkhana Club library which we would use very frequently. We were allowed to walk there. And there was a little shop called the Empire Stores, where the Prime Minister's house is now. You find a little thing there where we used to go and very often steal, because the joy of having put a Kit Kat chocolate or a Cadbury's chocolate into your mouth and walked out without paying for it was too much of a thrill. So these were the kind of little things.
It was an innocent life at
yes.
very innocent times too.
Yeah, very, very much so. A movie once a week, nothing beyond that. So I remember seeing Hamlet and the impression Hamlet created on us, where both my sisters who had come with me went under the chairs because they couldn't bear to see the ghost or something like that. And things like, but just once a week, and it costs us ₹1.25 with the back seats. And we weren't escorted, we went on our own.
That love of cinema has remained with you?
That love for cinema has certainly remained. And music also, because there were no shows to which we went, but the radio was there, and it was really looked forward to, because it was only at certain hours. And there used to be a program called A Date With You, which used to bring in a lot of very good Western melodies. And we used to, and you know, it would be a kind of a rating. So we'd all be glued to the radio then.
And who was your favorite musician of those days, or singers?
Well, I wouldn't be able to name them, but we liked R.D. Burman very much, and we liked, I really can't tell you the real names, but R.D. Burman.
What about your college days? Not from school?
Oh, my college days. College days were really great, because suddenly you felt like a bird who had found its wings, you know, so you could flap them around and go around. And I went to Miranda House. There was a huge furor in the family where it was said that you were sending your daughter to a college which does not have the best of reputation. You know, it's not a girls' college, or I mean, was a girls' college, still is, but it was, proximity to the university was too much. They all wanted me to go to Indraprastha College. They felt it was safer for girls. But my parents were very broad-minded. They sent me there, and I enjoyed every bit of it. I made lifelong friends. We did plays. We went to the coffee house. We went to a movie. Bunked classes. Not necessarily our parents knowing about it, but went to the hamburger joints. They just started those hamburgers. So once in a while, when we had the money, which wasn't very often, so we'd pool in, and it was always pooling in, about 7, 8 of us. We'd carry home ice cream outside the college every time. We studied a little bit, attended the minimal classes that were required to be attended to, and had some very good teachers and some awful teachers because they were too strict. I must tell you in shame today that both in school and in college, our Hindi periods were the least seriously taken. It's something, you have to learn it. So you just got 33% marks in Hindi and you got through it somehow. In school, the Hindi teachers were laughed at their pronunciation, because I remember one teacher saying Tuesday instead of Tuesday. So there it was. It was so much fun. Every time she said Tuesday, we'd all giggle and laugh, like all young girls do. And so
what did you study in college?
I did my MA in history. I did my BA before that in Miranda House. I did my MA primarily because I didn't know what else to do, and neither did my parents. As a child, I would have liked to have become Florence Nightingale, because those were the glorious stories of the glorious heroines of that era. Nobody talks about her now. Or I wanted to be a teacher, but a school teacher, not a college teacher. I thought college teachers were too far, you know, not their relationship was not so intimate. So we, and then what else could one think of? One could think of getting into the IAS or the IPS or sitting for the exams, or becoming secretary somewhere. Those didn't excite anybody anymore. But by the time I reached my MA, I was really laid back. I had a lot of fun. The St. Stephen's boys used to come across. We used to meet them in the evenings, go out to movies and all. Sometimes surreptitiously, mostly surreptitiously. And there it was, and I fell in love with one of them. And he got into the IAS, so any dream of getting into the IAS or IPS vanished. I took an easier way out and married somebody.
And
that
he
was
was